What's up, besties? Welcome back. So today we're gonna do a mukbang, and here I have some this is Parmesan basil Alfredo with rice noodles. I have Diet Coke, and then I have pickles because I want to do a pickle review. I've talked about this in the past, but pickle review would be fun because I really like pickles. Also, I get to crunch them, and I know not a lot of people like this, so warning ASMR towards the end. But these are the kosher dill spears by Vlasic. I love these pickles. These are like the OG pickles I had growing up that I always ate. And today we're gonna talk about something that I saw on r/paranormal and r/mysteries of the world. So I'm sure all of you have heard, even in SpongeBob, the term, I've heard it only in SpongeBob, screaming like a banshee. And so it got me all down a whole folklore myth rabbit hole after my last video where I talked about La Llorona, which is the weeping woman. And I was like, I need to start researching other myths. So I googled about the banshee, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about it. But I had pulled up, I can't remember these word for word yet, I'm not that good yet at storytelling, but it's a whole Reddit story. And this girl kind of talks about what the banshee is in her Irish culture and what she's heard about it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a bite of this. It's all right. There will be a lot of mouth noises and chewing throughout this video. So if you don't watch ASMR or mukbangs and you don't like those sounds, please be wary. I'm sorry. This is Diet Coke. Don't know if I told you guys. Here we go. So the banshee is actually part of the Irish culture. It is a sort of tale that a lot of kids were told growing up, and it also stems from some real things in Irish culture. I know a lot of Irish individuals were actually sent off to the war, so it does have some sort of historical aspect of it. But I'm going to start off with this story. So this person says, the banshee, being part Irish, I have heard stories about it as a child. The banshee is supposed to scream when you are going into a situation where it is unlikely that you will come alive. So I was driving down the road on a rainy day, and I heard the blood-curdling scream in my ear that sent a shiver up my spine. There was no one behind me, so I slammed on the brakes before crossing at an intersection. Sure enough, a huge pickup truck comes speeding down the middle where I would have been, and I would have been hit. I sat there for a minute. She couldn't get the scream out of her head. Then they thought, banshee. I pulled into a gas station, called my dad's grandma, who was the one who told me about the stories as a child. I told her what had happened, and in my shock, she chuckled and said, my dear, you were warned, and you listened to the banshee. Your great-grandfather did not. So I have another huge one coming up that I'll read, but I want to take a break in between to talk about this. So I know there's very similar folklore in like Hispanic culture, or at least in what I grew up with. My mom would kind of tell me that if you were walking past a cemetery and you hear your name, or like even if you're driving past and you hear your name, or you hear like, don't turn around, because if you turn around, you're inviting that negative energy or whatever it is into your life. And that's something that I believed growing up, but I don't know if I still believe it. I would say I do, because I've had some weird experiences at paranormal sites, but I definitely want to say that it's scary. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I have like this little fairy house right here, and it's for the banshee, because as we get into it, we'll talk about how fairies kind of tie with banshees and how they were depicted in Irish media. But I'm gonna go ahead and read the second story here, and this one's longer, so get ready, buckle in, because we're gonna be in this. I have been wondering about this for years, and maybe someone here can help me. I've read multiple stories about the Banshee, a creature whom has always fascinated me. Some details on how they predict, others on how they are the scream when the death of a loved one occurs or someone you know is impending. When I was 15 years old, I may have heard a Banshee scream. For context, I live in Montreal, Canada. For anyone who has ever been there, you have noticed you're surrounded by water, forests, mountains, and snow. I'm adding that in there because I know Montreal has some snow. It was up in the mountains that I had this experience. I grew up in the mountains. My city that I lived on was in the mountains. My school's 9th grade always took an art, music, and drama trip together spring through April, up into the mountains to a camp designed for school retreats. We stayed 3 days. There we had our own cabins to sleep in. The girls' cabin was the closest to the woods at the back of the property. This is important because I distinctly remember the layout of the property, and there was no reason for anyone, student or otherwise, to be past the cabins. Not to mention, there was still a lot of snow on the ground and no footprints going on or out of those woods. Going into or out of the woods. So they're saying that there's a cabin and behind it there was snow and it was fresh snow. So there should be no footprints there and back. And there wasn't. So we were a small class, so I noticed rather quickly that a few students were missing. No problem. Not at all. Not all of us were into our classes enough to want to leave the comfort of the city for quality time. But there was one student I was worried about. For privacy, I'll call him Kyle. Okay, Kyle. Kyle was a quiet kid. Didn't have many friends, but seemed happy enough. There was some sort of sadness around him, and I couldn't help but notice he seemed lonely even though he smiled. Stop, I'm feeling sad for Kyle. He didn't come, which surprised me because he was one of the drama kids and all of the others had showed up. He stayed with me the whole trip. I didn't know why, but I just couldn't get Kyle out of my head. On our last day, I realized why. Everyone was getting ready, and most of the girls and guys had dragged themselves to the front drive to load up onto the bus. But a couple of friends of mine and myself were taking a bit longer. I had dragged myself out of the cabin and was listening to the chatter and laughter coming from my left ear, which was the direction of the bus. When out of nowhere, I heard an ear-splitting scream. I whipped around my head and stared into the dawn-covered forest and saw nothing. But I know that scream came from in there. It was terrifying. The scream someone would make when they knew they were gonna die. Absolutely terrified. Not the scream of glee or a scream of slight exhausted teenagers. I turned to my friend in horror, who had barely flinched, and asked her if she heard it too. She said yes, but it was probably one of our classmates. I thought it was someone being murdered until another thought crossed my mind. The Banshee was stuck in my head, a creature that I hadn't thought of all weekend. I had no reason to, but it came and stuck with me for the whole bus ride back. I was a nervous wreck, thinking someone in my family was hurt, but when I got back from school, we were all ushered straight into our classrooms. This was fine if it weren't for the fact that it was 4 a.m. and classes were obviously over. Our principal came in promptly to inform us that Kyle, the classmate I had been so worried about over the weekend, had attempted suicide. My stomach hit the floor and I went completely numb. I had not felt that level of fear before. It truly made me understand how blood can run cold. The next day, a mass email went out to inform all our friends that he had passed away. I don't know if I predicted his death myself or if something in those woods connected to me and decided that I needed to know, but I am completely convinced that I heard the Banshee. If anyone has else experienced something similar, please let me know. I can't say for sure what happened, but it still terrifies me to this day. So, I actually have a similar story. It's not with a scream, but something similar. I had this coworker that I worked with at Walmart, right? And he was always really sweet, like really nice. And like one day I just thought of him. I was thinking like of how he would always read his books and he was really quiet. And you know, the quiet people are like always really nice. Well, so then turns out, like I was thinking about how he used to read his books. He had shot himself, but it was not in a way that I want to mention here because it was terrible. And I just remember thinking the day before, like, I really hope he's doing okay. Because he let me know that his girlfriend had broken up with him right before I quit my job. And that he was, like, taking it super hard because they were together for, like, 5 years. So Banshee is actually derived from Old Irish, where it means woman of the fairy mound, which fairies apparently come from mounds, so it means a woman who came from the fairies. But it's typically depicted as an old witch, and she's considered to be a harbinger or a harboring of death or doom individual. So she harbors death and doom towards you and brings death and doom your way. Typically a banshee, they say that they're covering their eyes and crying a low weep, very similar to the witch that I told you about from Left 4 Dead. They're very similar. She is a fairy woman, a spirit linked to the death realm. And if spotted, you should be praying for the safety of your family, yourself, or your friends, because someone might be joining her. According to folklore, a banshee ghost will actually perch up on a windowsill in the form of a bird and call to you to notify you of an incoming death or a warning. And now we see this all the time in media where people say, I knew my cousin was gonna die. I saw a blue jay fly in front of me and it wouldn't stop, squawking. And I'm sure a lot of people believe these things. I don't necessarily believe them, but definitely interesting. So people often depict the banshee as some sort of bird-like or fairy-like creature who wisps away into either dust, darkness, dawn, anything like that. So it could be a bird, it could be a bat, it could be anything harboring bad news in the spirit of flying. I have a story here of how it kind of ties into the war, because the expression scream like a banshee doesn't just come from this folklore. Like, you have to think, where did it actually derive from? If you don't necessarily always believe in folklore, like some people like to see the scientific aspect of it or the historical, and then they want to look at the paranormal side of it. And I just started off with the paranormal because it's definitely attention grabbing and exciting, like to hear about. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the history. I'm not going to bore you to death. So, an Irish tradition of the time, a woman saw their husband or the passing of a warrior or a soldier with a mournful song. These women were reputedly offered alcohol as a method of payment. At the time, the Irish church considered this bartering system contradictory in God's eyes, and these women were punished for their activities by forever becoming a banshee, mourning the loss of those soldiers at war or warriors. So I think it means that in Ireland or wherever, the Irish church was kind of, I'm going to assume Ireland only, but I can't say that because I don't know enough about their history. That wherever Irish church was considered, religion, they believe that if you had mourned the loss of your significant other, of any warrior or soldier, by crying your eyes out and drinking alcohol that was given to you, it's apparently considered blasphemous and you should be punished for it. You're a banshee for the rest of your life. It says it could be placed to the early 8th century. The banshee itself. So this folklore has been around for so long. Also, this plate feels like it's been forever. So what do you guys think about Banshee? I think pickles. We're gonna get into my pickle review really quick, but I think the banshees are real, personally, and I'm very interested in this folklore. I would like to know if any other people have any experience with banshees down below. If you ever heard some sort of scream. I know a lot of people say when death comes, they hear some sort of noise or indicator that they know someone has passed in their life. Maybe they heard the loved one say something, someone call their name. That happens all the time when the death of a loved one or even oneself is gonna come. I know one time me and my mom were driving and we used to go to this very big city. I think I've talked about this before, to visit my cousins growing up. And so my cousins lived like an hour 45 minutes away, like pretty far. And so we would take this trip up, you know, every couple weekends to see my family. And so my mom got a car and we just, you know, started driving as I got older because she got her license and she was like killing it. And I'm not gonna eat the pickle yet because this is kind of a serious story. But we're like driving down, you know, coming down a mountain or something. I don't remember, but it was just me and her because my dad had work or something. Like he was busy. I don't know if my sister was with us. He might have been babysitting my sister. But all I remember is we turned the corner to go down this mountain and my mom's like parking brake goes into park while driving. So the car's like acting funny and she's like, what the heck? And she looks down and she puts it back in drive. I'm just thinking, like, what if an accident happened like miles away and we were like driving fast, and what if we like got into an accident? Like, I don't know. I always think about that moment because it's definitely strange and I didn't move it. Like, I don't even remember bumping it. I remember I was like this. I think I was on my phone. My mom had said something and I was like, what? And I looked and it was on park. So definitely interesting. I think in the small ways we take for granted things that could save our life. So we got these pickles. We're gonna do a pickle review really quick. It's elastic kosher spears, dill spears. Looks like this. I saw someone put literal Kool-Aid in this and I want to try it so bad. This is what we're working with. Looks, I'll give it a, it's like very like neon. Like that can't be good for me, but it's amazing. I'll give it a 7 out of 10 in looks. In seasoning, only because I like vinegar, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Now we're gonna go in for the, what is the bite factor? Now that's a crunch. I would give the crunch an 8.5 out of 10. Very crunchy. Very, 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 very crunchy. Very sour, but it's good. Overall, the pickle, 8 out of 10. Let me know if you guys believe in the Banshee. I'm literally so full. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate the new views on my latest video. I've been doing some research and watching some documentaries on a murder that actually happened 30 minutes from my hometown and was covered up. So if you want to look forward to that, I won't be eating in my next video, but I'll do a sit down video. Please keep watching for that. Subscribe, like. If you want to see that video, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll get into it because that's going to be a long one. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.